Okay, so have you ever noticed like how you never really think about breathing
Yeah.
until like you
Right.
can't, like you're working out super hard and suddenly all you can think about is like getting that next breath. It's kind of wild, right?
It is. It is. Yeah.
We totally take breathing for granted. But turns out there's a whole lot more to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And today we're going to deep dive into that whole system, especially how our breathing powers us through exercise.
Ooh, good
If you're
stuff.
listening out there,
Uh-huh.
you're prepping for something big. I can feel it. And knowing how this all works can make a huge difference for you.
Yeah, you're going to want to stick around for this.
Big time. Now, the source material we dug into for this, it mentions like a zillion different parts of the respiratory system.
Oh, yeah.
Nasal cavity,
Yeah.
the glottis, larynx, trachea.
It's a lot.
Sounds pretty intimidating, right?
Yeah, it can be. It can sound like, you're back in anatomy class getting ready for a pop quiz. But honestly, you don't need to memorize every single term. The important thing is just to have like a general picture.
Okay.
So think of it this way. The respiratory system, it's basically like a pathway, right, for air.
Okay.
And the best way I can picture it is like, imagine a tree, right? It's got the trunk and then it branches out. And those branches split into smaller and smaller branches. So you breathe in air through your nose or mouth, and it travels down this trunk, which is your trachea.
Right.
That splits into these tubes called bronchi, which split into smaller tubes called bronchioles. And finally, way down deep in your lungs, you get to these teeny tiny little air sacs. Those are called alveoli.
Alveoli.
Yeah, and that's where all the magic happens, the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Okay, the magic part. That sounds pretty crucial.
Oh, yeah.
Break that down for us. How does breathing actually, like, work?
All right. So it all comes down to pressure, like literally the air pressure.
Mm.
When you breathe in, you've got this big muscle underneath your lungs called the diaphragm. It contracts, so it kind of flattens out.
Okay.
And then at the same time, the muscles between your ribs, called your intercostal muscles.
Intercostal, got it.
Yeah, they pull your rib cage up and out. So now what you've done is you've made more space in your chest cavity.
Right.
And that lowers the pressure inside your lungs.
Mhm.
And so air just like whoosh rushes in to equalize the pressure.
So it's like a vacuum.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when you breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes, your rib cage moves back down, pressure goes up, air gets pushed out.
Wow. It's so cool. I never thought about it like that.
It's pretty neat.
So we've got the air going in, we've got the exchange happening.
Right.
The source material also talked about all these different lung volumes.
Oh, yeah.
Tidal volume, vital capacity, residual volume, total lung volume.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, for sure. So think of it like you have a measuring cup, but for air, right?
Okay, I like that.
So your tidal volume, that's like the basic amount of air you breathe in and out just with like a normal breath.
Okay, normal chill breath.
Exactly. Then you got your vital capacity, and that's like, okay, take the deepest breath you possibly can, and now breathe out as much as you can.
Deep breath in, let it all out.
That's your vital capacity, how much you just breathed out.
Okay, I see.
Then there's residual volume, and this is kind of trippy. Even when you breathe out as hard as you possibly can, you can't actually get all the air out of your lungs.
No way.
Yeah, there's always some left behind, and that's your residual volume.
So we never actually completely empty our lungs.
Nope, never completely empty.
Wow. And then total lung volume is, I'm guessing, like the whole shebang.
You got it. That's like every bit of air your lungs can hold.
Okay, I think I'm getting this.
Very good.
So we got all these measures of lung capacity, but like, how does this all connect to exercise and like, actually performing well?
Well, that's where minute ventilation comes in. It's usually shortened to VE.
VE, okay.
And it's a super important measurement for like sports science and stuff because it tells you how much air you breathe in 1 minute.
Per minute.
Yeah. And you get that number by multiplying your breathing rate, like how many breaths per minute by your tidal volume, so how much air with each breath.
Gotcha.
And obviously when you're exercising, your VE goes way up.
Makes sense, yeah.
Like, think about endurance athletes. Those guys, they have crazy high VEs. They're moving way more air than like the average person. So bigger breaths, faster breathing. But there's got to be a limit to how much air we can actually move, right?
For sure. And, it's not all about lung volume.
Oh, okay.
Like, increasing it is good, don't get me wrong, but it's only one piece of the puzzle.
So there's more to it.
Yeah, you also got to think about how efficiently the gas exchange is happening down in those alveoli.
Right.
And then your cardiovascular system, how well that's transporting oxygen to your muscles and how well your muscles are actually using that oxygen. So it's not just about breathing in more air, it's about how your whole body is working with that air.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does our body actually know when to ramp up the breathing?
Yeah.
Like when we're working out hard, are we like consciously telling ourselves to breathe faster?
Well, it's kind of both. You've got this part of your brain in your brainstem called the respiratory center, and that sets your basic breathing rhythm like automatically.
Okay.
But then it also gets feedback from these little sensors all over your body. They're called chemoreceptors.
Chemoreceptors. Fancy.
I know, right? But they're basically just like these tiny little monitors, and they're constantly checking your blood for changes in carbon dioxide and pH levels.
Okay.
So as CO2 builds up, your blood gets a little more acidic, and these chemoreceptors are like, whoa, hey, brain, we got too much CO2 here. Got to breathe faster.
So it's not just about getting oxygen in, it's about getting that CO2 out.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Like a seesaw.
Yeah, like a seesaw. And when you're exercising, both your breathing rate and tidal volume, remember that measuring cup?
Yep.
They both increase to try and keep that balance. That's why you get winded. Your body's like, whoa, got to keep up with this demand for oxygen and got to get rid of all this CO2.
Makes total sense. So all this hard work our body's doing, I was reading that our bodies actually adapt to exercise over time.
Oh, for sure.
What's actually changing in our respiratory system?
A lot, actually. When you train regularly, your vital capacity, that maximum amount of air you can breathe in, that actually increases.
Really?
Yeah. And your respiratory muscles get stronger, so breathing is just like easier.
Huh.
And get this, your lungs actually get better at diffusing oxygen into the bloodstream and CO2 out of the bloodstream.
So you're not just training your muscles and heart, you're actually training your lungs to be more efficient.
Exactly.
That is so wild.
It is. But, the research also points out that there are some things that can throw a wrench in the whole system.
Right, those curveballs.
Yeah. Things like asthma or altitude.
Right. What kind of challenges do those pose?
Well, for example, asthma. That makes your airways constrict, so it's harder to breathe, especially when you're exercising.
Makes sense.
And then altitude, well, that's a whole other beast.
Yeah, I've heard athletes actually train at higher altitudes to get a competitive edge. How does that work?
Well, the higher you go, the lower the air pressure gets. So there's literally less oxygen in every breath you take.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so your body's like, okay, gotta adapt. So it starts making more red blood cells, which carry oxygen.
Okay.
And then when those athletes come back down to lower altitudes, they've got all these extra red blood cells. So they're like super oxygenated. They've got a real advantage.
Man, the human body is amazing.
It really is.
So we've learned that breathing, it's not just this simple thing we do without thinking. It's this crazy, intricate system controlled by our brains, influenced by our blood chemistry. And it can actually change and adapt. It's not just about filling our lungs. It's this whole dynamic process that directly affects how we perform.
It really is. And, it kind of makes you think, knowing how important breathing is, what if we use that knowledge to really improve how we function?
Oh, I like that.
Maybe specific breathing techniques or training strategies, or even just being more mindful of how we breathe.
Amazing. So much to think about. We've only just scratched the surface today.